morning.
A very good morning and welcome to this Tuesday morning's edition of Newsline, where we will be briefing you on today's headline-making stories in newspapers. I'm Arundhati Mudanaik, and joining me is senior journalist Faraz Shaukat Ali. Good morning, Faraz.
Jolly good morning to you, Arundhati. How are you?
Very good, doing very well.
And what do these papers have in store today?
Let's read on and see. The Daily Mirror says swearing in of state and deputy ministers to take place tomorrow. And another headline reads as this: avant-garde case terminated on AG advice. If you move on to the Ceylon today, it says major breakthrough in the Tajuddin case. We'll go into detail later on. And let's take a look at the Daily News. It says gang rivalry cause for Blue Mandal shooting. Another breakthrough, I suppose. And finally, the Island newspaper, it says Constitutional Council in place by September 22nd, and TNS presence in Geneva depends on UNOHCHR's war crimes report. Let's take a look at these stories in detail for us. Let's start off with this, where it says in the Daily Mirror, where it says swearing in of state and deputy ministers to take place tomorrow. Why is this delay?
Arundhati, what day is it today?
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. That was when we were told it's happening. But clearly,
It's not.
Prime Minister Wickremesinghe is still negotiating. But these things happen in a coalition government. Even though it's labelled national government, it's really a coalition government. And clearly, there's a lot of trading going on. And as I said the other day, gentlemen are never in a hurry. So there is no indecent haste to appointees. There's, after all, a full term of 5 years ahead.
And then what they want to make
And Mr.
everyone.
Wickremesinghe has waited 29 years for this. Well, for a full term.
Definitely.
He's the temporary Prime Minister, almost.
Almost.
But now he has a good chance of being a full-term Prime Minister in his fourth time.
So he's taking his time.
He's taking his time. Yeah.
We'll move on to the next, avant-garde case terminated on AG advice. Now, what is this now? There were many court cases being, heard,
Well, that's right, Arundhati. The thing is, before until the 7th of January, the UNP had files and explanations on everything.
certainly it's...
Right? That's what they had. Post the 9th of January, all these files disappeared. The problem is, on this, perhaps on the avant-garde case, in spite of the rhetoric, the AG and his department have to deal with facts and the legalities. And if he says that there isn't enough to go on, well then so be it. What can we do? Unless, of course, the UNP have these files and they release some new evidence.
Definitely. Now, we have Minister John Amratunga says foreigners only casinos, newly appointed tourism and Christian...
Yes, sorry.
Yes. So, now, isn't this a contradictory statement for us, where they've been talking about,
Quite.
They did not want casinos when the previous regime was talking about it,
well,
but now...
Yes, when President Rajapaksa's government had managed to attract this company from Australia. Mr. Packer, and they agreed and they made the appropriate declarations to the Australian Stock Exchange. A $425 million investment was squandered because of a policy decision that the UNP, that the opposition took, that they would oppose this once they're in government, which they did. Now we have, and it's rather rich for this minister to now say, oh, we're going to have these casinos, but only for foreigners. Well, excuse me, with $425 million, the bulk of that was going to be for foreigners anyway. Sri Lanka is too small a market for casinos. For the casino, no international brand is going to come in and open a casino, invest $400 million, even $100 million, or $50 million even, on the basis of this small little market that we have. Yesterday I said to you that the total revenue of Sri Lanka is $9.5 billion US. The revenue to the state. one of America's larger companies has a quarterly profit of $10.7 billion. That's in 3 months. So that is just to put this perspective. Sri Lanka is a tiny little dot. Exactly. And it doesn't have enough gamblers to fill the casinos. So that project that they refused was based mainly for foreigners. And now Mr. Amaratunga, now that he is in power, has now decided that, oh, well, we'll have the casinos after all. Why this sudden shift? Good point. Let's hear more about that in the next few months,
Definitely.
Hopefully.
So we have another headline in the Daily Mirror itself. BC won't be dissolved this week. The President Media Unit yesterday rejected reports that the Bribery Commission would be dissolved this week.
The impression being given to the public is that the Bribery Commission is being done away with. It is not. It is being disbanded temporarily until the Constitutional Council comes into play, and they will appoint the commissioners. That's what it is. And what does the Daily News say
The
there?
Daily News says gang rivalry caused for Blue Mandal shooting. Now, as it happened, there was, accusations going here, there. Now, finally, they are saying it's, a gang rivalry.
Once again, very important, this story serves to remind us, the public, that it pays not to jump to conclusions in any matter. Because, like you say, when the shooting happened, everybody was blaming each other. And now it turns out that it was some third party carrying out their rivalry on the streets where this happened. Good work from the police, and hopefully they'll bring it to a conclusion soon.
Right, and the police have also been a little busy with another headline making stories from Ceylon today. It says major breakthrough in Tajuddin case, where the mobile phone belonging to the deceased National Ruggerite Wasim Tajuddin, who died under suspicious circumstances, was found in the possession of an individual in Agarapathan area in Noor area.
Well, great work. The police in Sri Lanka really do a good job. So if politicians and so on let them be, they will actually do an honest day's work. However, having said this, and then they found the mobile phone, my sources tell me that the mobile operator to which Mr. Tajuddin had signed up with are now claiming that they don't have, that the records have been deleted.
So that means this breakthrough would not be effective?
Well, you may find the units, you have the phone, but the records have apparently been deleted. Now, this is highly suspicious, and even if it's not suspicious, it simply won't do, because there are rules in place, and the TRC have rules about how long these companies must hold the data. Now, we're told, again, my sources tell me that the mobile operator claims to have written to the TRC some time ago and said that because of time or space constraints, they were unable to maintain those records. But, you see, writing to the TRC is one thing, obtaining their permission is quite another matter. So I think this mobile company ought to be taken to task, and the TRC need to look into it closely, because it's odd that in some cases they can provide the information and in some cases they can't, and it's deleted. It sounds like an unlikely tale to me, but there you are.
Right, let's move on to another headline in Ceylon today, where KP welcomes internal investigation.
Well, I suppose KP must say that. But more to the point, I think perhaps when you introduce our guest this morning, we may want to, because he has a bit of information on this.
That's right. We have the deputy editor of the Island newspaper, Chaminder Ferdinando, joining us this morning. Good morning, Mr. Ferdinando.
Good morning, Joe.
I think you have something to say in this regard.
Where is KP, Chaminder?
He's now in Kilinochchi.
Right.
And actually he had been operating in Kilinochchi for some time, over a year ago. Soon after he was brought to Colombo from Malaysia.
Right.
He was under government custody in Colombo for some time. Then subsequently, he was released by the previous government, and he was allowed to set up his own NGO, and now he's in Kilnochi. So before the elections in January, the opposition, the previous opposition, the JVP, all these people alleged that they had all sort of information as regards KP's activities, involvement in terrorism and so on. But today, the Attorney General says that there is no specific charges or a case against this person. So it's a very interesting situation.
I think that's an understatement. Interesting. Goodness me.
No, it's an interesting situation in a sense. As you earlier pointed out, that they had all files. All of a sudden, the files are missing.
Yeah.
I believe maybe this government also realized today that the previous government had to do certain things.
Right.
At the end of the conflict.
Yeah.
That this government realized that KP cooperated with the previous government.
And of course the Malaysian government clearly cooperated with the Sri Lankan government.
Yes. Malaysia continues to cooperate with Sri Lanka, and the government, the previous government, had been able to arrest several people in Malaysia and bring them back to Colombo. They are under custody. So the investigations continue. I mean, if they really want to investigate terrorism and links with the LTT, I believe they should also investigate TNA. The TNA is the party which recognized the LTT as the sole representatives of the Tamil-speaking people. That was in 2004. On that, subsequent to that, the LTT declared war, and thousands of people died, children died in the war. Can TNA prove today whether TNA at least requested the LTT stop recruiting children? No. So those who are demanding accountability on the part of the Sri Lankan government should also inquire into the conduct of the TNA.
That's right, and then I noticed on one of my visits to the UK that Mrs. Balasingham, Adele Balasingham, as the crow flies from the Sri Lanka High Commission in London, Mrs. Balasingham lives perhaps not more than 6 miles away. Yet, and we also have video footage of Mrs. Balasingham hanging necklaces on children which had cyanide capsules on. Now, that's clear evidence of her involvement in child soldiers and so on, right? Now, she's still living free. There's various moves to hold Sri Lanka's President Mahinda Rajapaksa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the Defence Secretary, responsible for these matters, and the Army Commander too, then. And yet, we have this lady who there's clear evidence, and there's nothing been done. Incidentally, there's nothing been done either by the Sri Lankan government. Why is this sort of, oh, let her be attitude?
Actually, the British gave special treatment to the Balasinghams, because Balasingham was an employee of the British High Commission in Colombo. That's why he received the British passport. He was a British national. So on that, he married this lady, an Australian national, and the British ensured that they get the maximum possible support.
Right.
And those who are wanting the Sri Lankan government hold up before Geneva or International War Crimes Report inquiry, they must realize, as you pointed out earlier on some other day, that the entire period should be investigated.
Right.
Why not inquire into India's accountability on this issue? India formed terrorist groups. India trained them. India deployed them. Then India forced former President Jayawardena to invite the Indian army to Sri Lanka. Right. So since then, thousands of people died due to the actions of the Indian army. And don't forget, the Indian trained Tamil terrorists, Sri Lankan terrorists, raided Mali in 1988, latter part. They almost killed the Maldivian president. Right? Now, if they succeeded, just imagine, LTT here and the terrorist group plot attempted to assassinate the Maldivian leader. Now today, Gayo. Right. Now plot is part of the TNA.
Right.
Plot is a major part. The TNA consists of ITAK, that is Ilankai, Tamil Arsukachi, then plot, Telo and EPRF. Now of the four groups, four parties within the TNA, three were formally engaged in terrorism.
I have a question, Mr. Fernando, where now there's this figure of 40,000 that has been discussed all the time. How accurate is this? From where does this come from?
It's a lie. The whole thing is a lie, because see, people talk about 40,000 Tamil civilians killed during the last phase of...
Where did this 40,000 start with? Is it with Gordon White?
No, I think the Channel 4 talked about over 40,000 people.
Right.
But subsequently, now the Channel 4 allegation was made in that documentary in early 2011. But subsequently, the Amnesty International has estimated the number at 10,000.
Right.
So huge difference. Then the British Parliament was told in September the same year, 2011, that 100,000 people died within 5 months. So various people, various interested parties over a period of time had given different figures. But the previous government failed to counter that. See, the main problem is, according to the Darusman report, according to UN, those who made allegations against the previous government, against Sri Lanka, could not be questioned for a 20-year period. So how are we going to verify these allegations?
Yes, the close-out period.
Yes, so just imagine, how are we going to...
So there's no transparency?
Absolutely not. Now, if the US feels that the Yahapalana government is better than the previous one, the judiciary is free, so I suggest maybe this government should request the UN and US to make available all the evidence with them to the proposed domestic inquiry, so we can investigate.
I have a question that I would like to direct at both of you. Now, the appointment of a TNA member as the opposition, will this have an effect in Geneva, where Sri Lanka is concerned?
Well, from my analysis, the appointment of the TNA as the official opposition is nothing to do with their ethnicity or that to appease the US or Britain or Australia or anyone, or Canada even. This is because in Sri Lanka we are practicing democracy. And in a democracy, when the major two parties, the mainstream parties, UNP and the SLFP, call them what you like with their other labels and so on, but the fact is this is the two parties, when they have joined hands, they've signed an MOU, then they become a coalition. Of the residue in Parliament, whether we like it or not, the TNA remains the largest group of the residue. And therefore, the Speaker, the TNA having written and asked the Speaker to do this, the Speaker had also received information that President Sirisena, in his capacity as leader of the SLFP, would not be asking for this position. Because clearly, President Sirisena also is aware that you can't possibly form the government and the opposition all rolled in one, unless you have a truly national government to the exclusion of no one. However, having said that, now that the TNA is the lead opposition, this presents a myriad opportunities for the others to say, well, look, in Sri Lanka, even your minority party is actually the official opposition. So I think that some of the Tamil diaspora groups, what I call the LTTE-leaning diaspora groups, will have their work cut out, because now their backers in the US and in Britain will say, come on guys, your people are in government, they're part of government, even though they're in opposition. So it must augur well in Sri Lanka. I don't know, that's my...
I totally agree with you. Having said that, I'd like to add that the TNA should be grateful that so far it has escaped any scrutiny, no investigation. But see, President Maithripala Sirisena and Prime Minister Wickremesinghe, rightly, they backed TNA's appointment as the opposition leader. Just listen to Mr. Sambandhan's first speech in Parliament, having accepted that post. He called for division of the country for 5 regions. So you must see, they must also compromise. The TNA must change. It will have to change. It must change. It cannot continue to propagate things that united state must remain. That is true. But for some reason, the TNA, on one hand, they want the Sri Lankan government to compromise, to agree to certain things. The government is prepared to do so. But having obtained the leadership of the opposition, the first very statement, you know that he acted in a manner and to place both the president and the Prime Minister Wickremesinghe in a very difficult position.
Well, what will happen in the UN now this time round? Clearly, the Western allies have a situation where they have a product they can market. They can say, in Sri Lanka there is a new beginning. There's a new government with a new commitment to resolving these national reconciliation issues and perhaps look into these allegations. My only difficulty there is that whilst these allegations must be looked at, what happened in the 29 years before that, or the 30 years before that? Why only limit it to there when it's all that needs to be looked at? Surely there's a case to do that, isn't there?
Yes, obviously the Western powers do not want to antagonize India. With rising Chinese, with the Chinese flexing muscles in this region, the Western powers need India to counter China. So that's one reason. So not only that, you will see that nobody wants India to explain why it started this. India in 2012 and 2013, India voted against Sri Lanka in Geneva. The very country which created terrorism in Sri Lanka destabilized this country. And in the process, the LTT killed 1,500 Indian soldiers, named 3,000, killed Rajiv Gandhi. But still, for political reasons, regional reasons, nobody wants to antagonize India. They just, that is why they talk about the last phase of the war. But if you investigate the whole thing, the entire period, they'll have to investigate the circumstances under which Sri Lankan terrorists try to kill Maldivian leader. Right. So and also like say how Indian trained terrorists armed the JVP. The JVP received support from some of these chaps.
I see.
So it's a big issue. It's a huge issue.
And also, I suppose when they go to Geneva, there is this business that the United States are now not opposed to a domestic inquiry. Is that, how do you feel? Is that like, is that a softening of the stance, or is it an understanding of the situation that in Sri Lanka to sell the idea of an international inquiry will be very difficult for any politician?
Before the US got involved in this situation, the Canadians, the British tried to move resolutions at world forums, but they failed. Unlike UK, Canada, France and Australia, the United States supported the Sri Lankan army offensive against the LTT.
Right.
They provided support, critical support.
Right.
But they got angry, they got upset when the former president and the former defense secretary refused to stop the offensive.
Right.
That was in early, I think, February, March period. So since then they changed their stand and they try to undermine the previous government. The US wanted the previous government out, that's all. They are not really concerned about human rights.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But subsequent to the US changing its stance, I sought a clarification from the British High Commission in Colombo. The British took up the position that the Sri Lankan government, the present government, implement the recommendations of the Geneva report. So it's not going away. It's not going away.
What do you think, Shamindra, would have happened if the Sri Lankan government took all these detainees and shipped them off to, say, Delft or some little island, and prosecuted and held them captive there and prosecuted them there and kept them captive there to the exclusion of the Sri Lankan law? I.e., what would have happened if President Rajapaksa did a Guantanamo Bay? What do you think would have happened then?
Nothing would have happened.
You and I would have had a lot to write about.
Nothing would have happened if the US agreed. You know, a similar war crimes report was moved against Israel.
Right.
The UN Human Rights Council consists of 47 countries. I think there were 4 or 5 against the government of Israel. I think in some cases 46 countries voted against Israel and only US stood by Israel. But the US got that report, put it on the dustbin, 46-1. So the might is right. I mean,
so perhaps Mr. Sajinwas Gunawardena as the monitoring MP and Professor J.L. Piris as the minister should have entertained them and had even more expensive stuff to drink and put it on the tab.
I think the previous government spent over 900 million Sri Lankan rupees, maybe much more.
To me, that's still not enough. But I think
that's all the time we have for this morning. It's time for your thought of the day.
Well, yes. Thank you, Shamindra, for being on our network. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. And on that note, have a good day.
Yes, and thank you, Faraz, for joining us. And I also like to thank our Deputy Editor of the Island newspaper, Shamindra Ferdinando, for joining us this morning. And thank you, all our viewers, for joining us this morning. And please do join us on Wednesday morning as well. Have a pleasant day ahead of you.